Hello all, welcome to the Point Talks. Today we have the opportunity to talk about the Middle East again. Uh, 10 years since we started the Arab Spring, and in this session I'm here with a great group of participants from Lebanon, Iraq, Egypt, and Jordan. During this 1.5 hour, we're expecting that my guests is going to answer basic questions, but it's a big questions also in the same time. Uh, Today I have Mr. Hussam Jafar, he's the Secretary General of Ain Network, and I have Mrs. Samar Al-Husseini. She's a human rights activist, researcher, and she is also working for Andalus Institute for Tolerance and Anti-Violence Studies. We have Mr. Julian Koursan, and Mr. Julian is the director of Lebanese Transparency Association, and we have Mrs. Sausan, uh, Mrs. Sausan Garipia. She's from Transparency International, and also she's a director and a board member of Rashid for Transparency, and Rashid is a Jordanian NGO. Uh, we have a very huge technical problem in the Sausan Gharaïba, yes, Sausan Gharaïba from Rashid. We have a technical problem in Jordan. The electricity is cutted definitely in Amman, and Sausan have a very short time to participate with us. We are going to directly go to the questions. There is a main questions about the future of the Middle East after 10 years from the Arab Spring. And there is another question, actually, is the Middle East now, is the Arab world now, is a stable, a progressive Arab world, or is still things to come and things to see? There is also a main question about the democracy and the human rights in the Middle East now, and how the Arab world is affected by the Arab Spring, and is the life of average citizens is much better, or is it much worse? I will start my questions with Mr. Julian, as I am not sure if Sausan Gharaïba is capable of participating or not. Sausan, can you hear us?
I can barely hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and this is very happy for me to hear you now. Sausan, are you ready to answer some of the questions of this session today? No. Okay. So
nothing. I'm losing connection, Ustaz Ahmed, and I don't know what to do. So this is a very unusual.
This is a very unusual situation. I can imagine that. Anyway, we will go back to Sausan when the things are more capable. I can imagine if there is a really major electricity cuts, then I'm expecting that maybe also the internet will be affected. It's apparently affected here. Julian, are we having a better Middle East, better Lebanon? And did the Arab Spring help by anyhow?
Thank you, Ahmed, for moderating this panel, and thank you also for the organizers. I think it's a very important question. What is clear is that the outcome is not clear yet.
Is
not clear yet, the outcome. What is clear is that we are not anymore in a status quo, whether in Lebanon or in the region. Things are moving, but it's not sure that they are moving in the right direction. As opposed to, say, let's say the first decade of the 21st century, where the situation was much more rigid in most of the countries in the Middle East, where the situation of human rights was really in a challenging aspect. However, what is clear is that since the Arab Spring, there has been some changes. There has been some movements, I would say. People were able in some countries to go down on the streets and to claim for their rights. The outcome was not always in their favor, but at least the space has been much obvious to see, which was not the case eventually 15 years ago. As for the case in Lebanon, unfortunately, Lebanon is currently passing through a very rough time. I think this is the first time that Lebanon goes through such a challenging time. Even during the time of the civil war between 75 and 90, although there were armed conflicts and there were also armed clashes between different Lebanese factions, the socio-economic situation was much better. Currently, while we are participating to this panel, we are in a very dire socio-economic situation. We are on the verge of an economic and monetary collapse. We have been affected, like most of the countries of the world, by the outbreak of COVID-19. So it's not something special for Lebanon. And I think everyone still remembers what happened 8 to 9 months ago on the 4th of August, the infamous Beirut port blast that led to the destruction of a city. More than 90,000 buildings were destroyed, more than 300 people were killed, for not to say assassinated. The damage is estimated for around $8 billion. This blast came in a very challenging context also. And even though this is we are going through a very challenging situation, we still do not have a government that has been formed. We are still under a caretaker government, which is not even convening to meet and to take decisions that are important for the citizens. So unfortunately, I think we are in a certain political stalemate. And this is not, I think, if you take the last 10 years in Lebanon history, we had more than 6 governments. We've been for 2 years without any president. We canceled and rescheduled 2 legislative elections. So the last elections took place in 2018, and before that, and prior to this, we had the legislative elections in 2005. So in a nutshell, although we are in a very challenging situation at different levels, we are really going through a very tough political instability that is affecting in a very bad way the daily lives of Lebanese, of citizens in general in Lebanon.
Julian, you mentioned the status quo in the Middle East does not exist anymore. It's not the same like 10 years ago, but in the same time, when you're talking specifically about your country, you feel the situation is more and more bad. Are you more in the next 5 years? Is Lebanon is capable of go back and rebuild the country and creating stability, or is Lebanon, in your personal expectation and also expertise expectation, or is Lebanon also going on the path of another civil war?
Well, like we say, when there is a will, there is a way. So at the technical level, yes, there is, the roadmap is clear. It's clear what should be done in order to rebuild Beirut, let's say, and to recover the economy and to go back to a normal way of life, even if it's going to be painful. And it might take time, but the light at the end of the tunnel can be seen if there is a will. So the issue is beyond the technical perspective or technical know-how that is able to solve such a challenging situation. The core challenge is at the political level. The decision makers in Lebanon till now are not able to agree on a specific roadmap, due mainly to a power struggle, I would say, related to to several factors. As you know, Lebanon is highly affected by what's happening in the region. We live, Lebanon is on a tectonic plate, unfortunately, and it's highly affected by what's happening on the regional and international level, and every decision that is taken out there affects the evolution of the situation in Lebanon. It's not clear where we are heading. What is clear now that the pain is increasing on daily basis. Numbers are really alarming in terms of socioeconomic consequences of the current situation. A political stalemate, all the scenarios are possible. There is a discourse that is saying that we might delve into another civil war. There is a discourse that says that we are surely heading to a situation where there is a lot of social unrest.
Julianne, are you with us? Well, it seems there is another technical problem in Lebanon. I hope it's not electricity. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm back. I'm back, I think.
Okay. Can you make sure that your voice is loud a little bit, because
Sure. So there are different scenarios. One scenario that is saying that we might delve into another civil war. Another one that is confirming that we are surely heading towards a social unrest period. And the third solution that is providing a third scenario that is providing the solution for Lebanon at the technical level, but what is still missing till now is the political will of the different Lebanese decision makers that were not able yet to convene and to agree on a common and joint vision to help Lebanon come out from this disastrous situation, unfortunately.
Which scenarios you think is closest to be happening?
Well, what is clear is that the social unrest is this is very clear. I think we already witnessed some clashes here and there, and some demonstrations that led to certain violence based on socioeconomic claims or other types of claims as well. This is very clear, and if the situation continues like this, I think this is where we are heading, and I hope this will be the maximum that we'll reach. I hope.
Okay.
I hope this is not only a wishful thinking.
Okay. Thank you, Julian. We will come back to you again. Wissam, the situation in Iraq is already in a civil war, domestic violence, all kind of bad news coming over Iraq since the last 10 years. And suddenly, a revolution, civic revolution with young people in the streets, no arms, no guns, no weapons, and people is asking for a reform, and a deep reform. What's the situation of the stability in Iraq in your eyes?
Hello, Ahmed. Thank you. And I'm really happy to join Point Talks. It's a great opportunity to be one of the speakers of this panel. And as you know, this is very, big and a huge subject to talk about the region and what is happening after 10 years of Arab Spring, especially in Iraq, considering that we got a revolution, October Revolution last year, and the situation and somehow is really messy in there. Ahmed, this is not about just Iraq. We got democracy in Iraq in 2003. And when we got democracy, this is something has nothing to do with the Arab Spring. We got democracy because of the American invasion. But when we look to the region, and when we were talking about stability, unfortunately, the answer to that question, if the region is more stable now after 10 years of Arab Spring, or 20 years at least after 2003 when Iraq became democratic, the answer is no, unfortunately. And the reason is democracy itself that created a situation where all the region now is characterized by either being weak states or states under struggle. And of course, this is going in all the way from Iraq to Syria to Lebanon, as Julian explained, Yemen, Egypt, Libya. Thank God we got some peace in Libya. And except for Tunisia, of course, which is doing just okay. That's the only exception we got in Tunisia. And the amazing thing, and once again, I'm not here talking only about Iraq. The amazing thing about the whole region, the indicators tell us that even after 10 years of Arab Spring, the political participation in the region is in decline. The political participation in the region is in decline. So, and by political participation, we mean percentage of people voting in elections, how many people join political parties, of course, based on the economist unit methodology. If we got only 7% of the population are joining political parties, that's just a good indicator. And also the willing of people, to participate in decision-making process, and also to get involved in issues related to public policies. So we got the indicators that tell us that the political participation, all these indicators are in decline. But the amazing thing is at the same time, the tendency of citizens in MENA region, especially in countries that became democrats, the tendency of expressing their opinions through demonstrations and protests is at the highest level. And the essential question in this situation is if the people want to express their opinion through demonstrations, why don't we see this willing tone to a political actions? Because we're talking about democratic states, and democracy should enable people and somehow give them the tools and empower them to make a change through it, whether you're going to vote in elections, or whether you're going to join a political party or even establish a political party. And somehow you have to get the benefit of the democracy by this way. So why we see people still, tending to protest in MENA region, but not, participating in somehow through the tools of democracy? The answer, in my opinion, I think, because people in MENA region are 0%, have a trust in any government in the region. And when I say 0%, that means even when the government start working and got elected or appointed by the parliament, the people immediately, they won't trust the government. So, and they don't think that this government are capable to make any change. And the ironic thing about this thing, when we got democracy in MENA region, we got some governments in the situation when they are weak enough, to control what is going on within the borders. And again, this is something going on within the borders. I know there is some international interventions and other, elements that affect democracy in the region that has nothing to do with what is going on within the borders, but it's something going on within the borders. So the democracy created a situation where we got weak institutions, and governments, central governments, were weak enough, to provide two important things: security and basic needs. When any government can provide security and basic needs, that's, the failure state model that we are afraid of. So if the government are weak and can provide this basic, services, and citizens at the same time, through democracy, they just expected, they have a very high expectation that they're going to, enhance their economic situation. They're going to have a very high quality services from the government. And either way, both of them, the government are not able to do that, to provide such services. And also citizens at the same time, they are not patient enough to wait and understand and participate through the tools of democracy to enhance the situation. And that's why we got a very, complicated process that has started in MENA region when democracy is started. So unfortunately, the region is not stable. The weakness of governments and the state institution created a situation where, international interventions will have a part to influence what is going on the domestic policies in these countries. And also, because the institutions are weak, we got some sectarian divisions, ethnic divisions in the region, and there is a conflict, and so go on. Since 2003 in Iraq, as I said, and since 2011 in the whole region.
So You put a lot of light on the Middle East in general, but can you talk a little bit more about the situation in Iraq?
But you know, in Iraq, as I said, it is the same. We got democracy in 2003, and ever we got democracy, we got the same problem that any democracy in the region had, which is we have a weak government and they can't control what is going on within the regions. Of course, you know, people have some limits and some patience, and they thought that the situation is going to be changed until 2019, and that's where the revolution of October erupted, and people now are very angry against the government authorities, because unfortunately the governments did not respond to the demands of citizens, and instead, you know, they killed them, they jailed them, and they also, you know, and somehow they allowed to some armed power to take part in this conflict. And you know, these armed powers, so they controlled the government during the revolution, and we found the state institution has no power to control what is going on. So that's what we got. We got, you know, a revolution, and then is this revolution succeeded in somehow to take down the old government that was led by Abdul Mahdi, and now we got a new government, and this new government promised to respond to citizens' demands, and one of them is to do an early election. Unfortunately, when we talk about an early election, as I explained about the political participation, this is a very essential part of any democracy, because when you have the opportunity to... Yes, Ahmed.
Thank you very much, Wissam. Simple services is not provided in the Middle East, and our friend Wissam is saying that most of the government is, in reality, is a weak government or semi-failure government. Not a good news from Iraq. Samar Husseini from Egypt, basically, who lives not in Egypt. What do you think after 10 years of you participating in the Tahrir Square revolution? Is the situation in Egypt and the Middle East is more stable?
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to participate in this event. And also thank you for Dashni for arranging this. I think it's very important to look in the region, Egypt and other countries who witnessed the Arab Spring, and see it from a comparison point of view, and see how the situation has been evolving over the 10 years. And thanks for the other, of course, panelists. Their insights are very useful. Well, I will talk about Egypt. I think Wissam did a good overview on the region, but I will tell you something. In 2010, the Freedom Indicator said that Egypt was the 49 on the world, which is not a bad thing. It was like semi-free country. In 2020, we're talking Egypt is the 18 on the world, which is not free country. Democracy in Egypt is not there. We're talking about a clear military state, a military-oriented state. We're talking about a general who ruling the country, even when it comes to the different democratic mechanisms, elections or voting elections, political participation in general, demonstration or protest or even civil society. All of these elements are kind of tied, shrinked, or under oppression. We witnessed over these years, we witnessed more than 5 elections in Egypt. 2 of them are presidential, and almost 3 or 4 parliamentary elections. One of the presidential elections were actually like free and fair, and the other 2 presidential elections, we are speaking about a clear case of one candidate elections. So democracy meaning and democracy values, we're speaking about a farce elections, where the other candidates were either put behind bars for only running for presidency, or they were put under house arrest. So this was the key thing when it comes to elections and democracy in the region. When it comes to the parliamentary elections, we had three human rights activists, lawyers, and political activists who wanted to run for an office, for a parliament office, and they were put behind bar under the very famous legal case, Hope case or Al-Amal, in which people were only accused of planning to run for elections, which is not even an accusation anywhere in the world. When are we talking about the political participation of the people? We have the, let's say, from 2014 till now, the protest law has changed dramatically in Egypt. You cannot go in a protest without getting arrested. And if you're getting arrested, you don't know when you will be released. So democracy speaking, no, Egypt is not democratic after 10 years. It's not what we hoped for. It's not what we called for when we went to the square in 2011. There is nothing from the key slogans of the revolution that we were asking for, that we were demanding for the future of the country has actually happened. And I think this is more or less is the reflection of what's happening in the whole region, except for the Tunisian example.
Thank you, Samar, very much. Nothing is good. I can see the 23 participants, but no good news for them till now. Let us focus more on our field, which is the human rights and the accountability and transparency. And we all know that the new technology was playing a very important role in all kinds of activities, political activities since January 25th in Egypt, and also the revolution in Tunisia. The technology and the new technology helped to advance a little bit the situation when it comes to democracy, to human rights, to transparency, and are we knowing more information about our governments through the internet, through using the mobile phones, or the situation is still bad and close? I go back to Julian.
I would say in terms of the technologies, surely technologies play
Julian,
a very important role. You're
not
not hearing me well. What about now?
If you use one of them as a mic, the other one as just
now it's clearer. It's clearer.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So yeah, what I was saying that obviously, and the case, the technology surely played a very positive role. Let's take the example, for instance, of social media, and let's think that if in the case that we didn't have any social media platform, how the situation would have been. I would say the outcome is positive. Surely there are some eventually some loopholes or some challenges that social media might create, but as an overall outcome, we are able to, citizens are able to know better on daily basis what's happening. Technology has also helped some government administrations to become more transparent, I would say, but surely the process and the way is still long. Obviously, when it comes, let's say, to human rights situation, and when it comes to civic space, and let's say when it comes to putting pressure on some activists, surely social media is playing a very positive role in mobilizing support and shedding the light on human rights violations or on corruption cases. And in that case, it's creating a kind of snowball effect that is putting pressure on the government and pushing the government to reconsider some behavior that is adopting in some cases. Obviously, it's not finding solutions to all the types of challenges that we are facing. But again, I would say to answer your question, let's imagine that a world where there is no technology and where there is no social media, for instance, I'm pretty sure that situation would have been much worse.
In your country, in Lebanon, every other Arab thinks that Lebanon human rights situation is much, much better than other countries. At least freedom of speech, at least political participation, at least all kind of other kind of rights. No, you don't have detention based on your political opinion. You are capable of function as an NGO. You are capable of receiving international funding, campaigning, and goes to the streets to say your opinion or to show one report or something like this. If this is going bad or this is going much better?
I would say it's stable. There are each now and then some violations that are taking place, but not to an extent that is comparable to other countries in the region. And this is, I think, in our favor as civil society activists. I think this is a very positive, because I think, Ahmed, you're trying to come out with some positive news. So this is it's a very, I would say, humble positive news from Lebanon. But unfortunately, the final outcome is not in our favor. But I don't think this is caused by having such an open society, I would say, and where civic space is more or less much respected, and you rarely see someone that is imprisoned for his or her political opinion. But at the security level, I think the situation is much more challenging. Recently, we witnessed the assassination of one prominent researcher and journalist. Each now and then, there are some assassinations that are taking place, and that, at least through what we are reading in the newspapers, that are linked eventually to some cases or some security cases that are happening in Lebanon. But as an overall outcome, I think we are in a good situation. But unfortunately, the result on the economy, at the social level, and even at the political level, the efficiency and the effectiveness, I think, is not as expected.
Well, some positive news here. Wissam, what's the state of, you are moderating in a very important project with Tawasul, your organization in Iraq, and basically you are monitoring what the government is doing on a daily basis. This is what part of your activities. And can you tell us more about the situation of transparency and accountability and the human rights in Iraq?
Yes, let me start with the human rights, because in 2019 we got a revolution, and this revolution, as I explained, the government did not respond to the demands of citizens, and instead, they used the police and jailed and killed and assassinated demonstrators in Iraq. So human rights situation now, after many years, it's about 2 decades, when we got democracy and civil society and international communities started to create some human rights institutions that are powerful enough to monitor the human rights violations. But unfortunately, after 2 decades, just one example, where we got this revolution, you find, unfortunately, most now of civil activists in Iraq are either threatened or they are accused to be jailed by the government for some unreal reasons. And also in the same how, they are threatened to be assassinated by militia, because in Iraq we got militia. So human rights situation in Iraq is a bit worse than the way it used to be. As for transparency and accountability, Ahmed, you know, I just explained that what we got in Iraq is a weak government. And unfortunately, we got another situation in this weak government. We got something we call it a state within the state, which means it is a hidden state that is controlled by some powerful people and political parties, and those political parties, they have power, they have money, they have international and regional connections, and the same how they got militias. So, and those political parties who are powerful, they are the one who run the show in Iraq. And as I say, the government has failed to provide services, and citizens in Iraq, especially in Iraq, they feel they can't control the situation. They can't, hold the government accountable. And in the same time, those who govern them, as you know, they don't provide enough information about what they are doing and what the government accomplish in general. So, and that's where technology can make a solution to this problem, because what we need, to make citizens in Iraq, for an example, to be active on the political level, which means they have the power. As I say, this is a failure of democracy. They have the power to control those who govern them. And to do that, considering that the government does not provide enough information about their performance, we need to use technology. Technology is the powerful tool that can provide it to civil society, to use it and to enable these NGOs to monitor the government. And at the same time, I don't want to say that the NGOs is going to replace the state, but at least in this situation, they are going to monitor what the government do and provide information to citizens. Of course, this is a long way, and using technology is not, is something we used to do, so it's going to take some time. That's what we are trying to do through AIN network, whether in Iraq and other countries. We're trying to train some NGOs and let them, engage in a process where they can monitor the government performance, and this, at the same time, we try to provide information, as much information as it can be, to the citizens, so they will be, motivated to use their will and their vote to do some change in these countries.
Thank you very much, Hussein. Well, Samar, I think try to put some light to the situation of the human rights and transparency in Egypt. I hope you get us some positive news.
I hope so too. But unfortunately, I feel like I would be a party pooper in this panel, because every time I would speak about how bad it is or how deteriorating the situation is. Especially when it comes to human rights, I think no one who is aware of human rights record in Egypt could say that there has been ever worse era in Egypt. This is the worst that we have seen. People are behind bars for unlimited times. Freedom of expression are in vain. Media is totally monopolized by the army or the pro-regime companies. So you have only one voice, one propaganda, like the state propaganda, and you have only the voice of the state and the explanation of what the state wants and what the state wants to convey to the people. And when it comes to the legal aspects, even people when they we have almost, according to the Human Rights Organization, we have around 60,000 detainees. This number, although we don't know if it's accurate or not, but there are no official numbers coming out from the Ministry of Interior in Egypt saying that, no, we have this number. So until they prove it's not, then this is the number that we have. And most of these people, they're in pretrial detention. They could stay in pretrial detention for 3 to 4 years, and then they would be released. They don't know why they have these years wasted from their lives and why they're now released. or even they might be enlisted in new cases if they want them to stay in jail. We have journalists behind bars. I would like highlight Isra Abd Fattah, Sanae Saif. We have human rights activists like Ale and Ziyad and many others. I cannot list all names, but we have like hundreds behind bars for nothing but expressing their rights or like practicing the rights and expressing their opinions. The new NGO law that has been issued in the last 3 years, I guess, it puts a lot of limitation on the work of civil society when it comes to how they operate. The human rights like activities itself is not there in the law. So by law, this is an illegal activity. You cannot do it. And if you want to implement any other activity, you have to get the security and the military approval, which is something that is hard to get now because both parties they don't tend to agree together. And when it comes to freedom of expression, most of the independent newspapers has been like pre-owned by the state or their companies. One of the key businessmen in Egypt who were like leading Al Masriyoum, one of the first independent newspapers in Egypt, has been detained by the military intelligence, put behind bars, and forced to sell his newspaper to a pro-regime like company or whatever. So like talking about human rights in Egypt, it's a sad story. It's a very, very sad story. And although the president is trying now to give a sense due to the new American administration that there would be something like there will be some kind of easing the situation in Egypt, you cannot see an actual steps. You can see like few number of people who get like released, but you don't know why they get released and what about the rest behind bars. So this is what it is about the human rights like record in Egypt. Yeah.
Thank you, Samar, very much. It seems the situation in Egypt is much worse than the other countries. And this is giving me a good opportunity to make the whole thing, reverse the whole thing. I'm going to ask the question not in a very positive way. I'm going to ask the question in a very negative way. So, Julian in Lebanon and Wissam in Iraq, do you think your situation is much better than Egypt or worse than Egypt? We'll start with Julian.
I hope we had to ask the question in a different way, but this is the reality, Ahmed. I think it's a very good question. In terms of political and civil rights, I think the situation is much better, obviously. Our civic space is much more respected. It is harassed each now and then, but not to an extent that it's creating a huge impediment to our work as NGOs, as activists, as political groups. So there is a certain kind of positive dynamics, I would say, especially after the 17th of October as well, when, as you know, thousands of Lebanese took the streets and they were demonstrating against the government and the disastrous economic situation that we are witnessing in the country. However, when it comes to the socio-economic situation, depending on which indicator we are cycling, I think if you take Lebanon, let's say, with its public debt ratio to GDP, we are third worldwide after Mozambique and Japan. So I think we are in a very challenging situation. Since our economy is 80% dollarized as well, you can see that we do not have pretty much dollars left in our economy due to the economic model that has been adopted by several governments and due to the rough economic situation in which we are going through. So in terms of economy and monetary situation, I think, and as you know, we defaulted on paying our treasury bills a year ago. So in terms of economic and monetary situation, I think we are in a pretty bad situation, and Egypt is better than us. But I'm not sure about the development indicators, the poverty rate, the unemployment, which are in Lebanon increasing highly and as a result of the monetary and economic situation. So in a nutshell, I would say at the political and civil perspective, from a political and civil perspective, we are in better situation. But at the socio-economic level, I think we are in a fierce competition, unfortunately.
Well, I think Wissam is not there anymore. I hope he's not hiding because he don't want to answer the question. But as I have just Julian and Samar still existing with the capacity of internet and electricity, I will make like a small context. I will give each one of you a magic stick, and you have to make a choice which political regime or which political system or which political leader do you prefer to lead your country or to adopt the political system in it from the region. You cannot choose from Europe, you cannot choose from United States, you cannot choose from anywhere else. Just choose from the Middle East, just choose from the MENA region. Summer.
This is a hard question, actually, because I believe that it's really hard to take an example from a country and to apply it to another country. Because, and I don't want to repeat the government like talk, but every country has its own relatives, or its own specific characteristics that needs certain like solutions that wouldn't be in the other country. I would say the Tunisian example is very like inspiring in the region when it comes on several levels, human rights level, women rights, democracy even level. But I'm not sure it could be applied in Egypt because the situation in Tunisia has a clear difference between the one in Egypt, which is the military presence is not as strong as it is in Egypt. And in Egypt, we have the military rulings like since 1952. It's the military state and they control it, they have their business, they control the economy, they control the businesses, they know who is doing what and when, and no one can intervene in any of the files without the approval of the military. So this example, although it's very inspiring, but it cannot be applied in Egypt because of this specific difference. Maybe the other elements might be like normal to apply, especially like I think that the Muslim Brotherhood now, after what happened in the recent years, their mentality about how to be in politics maybe a little bit shifted, and they can be more like, I would say, modernized as the one in Tunisia. But the military presence makes it all in Egypt. So it's really hard to say that. Let's take the Tunisian example and put it in Egypt. It's the same like in 2011, when people said that maybe the solution for Egypt is to implement the Indonesian solution or the something from East Europe. It is not the same. Every country has its own problems and its own like I would say issues. And so it's really hard to implement. But the Tunisian one, for sure, they have a very inspiring experience in the region. So.
Thank you very much. I will catch Wissam. Wissam, we missed you for like 5 minutes.
Very sorry, the internet just got broke down, and that will give you a hint. What the internet got broke down, and
okay. So Wissam, very quickly, we changed the question. Actually, we forwarded from the question. If you have a magic stick and you can change the political regime or you choose a political leader from the whole 22 Arab countries, which one you choose for Iraq?
You mean to choose a leader from them?
Leader, political system, which is the best in the Middle East, not United States, not Europe, not other places in the world, just what's the best, you think it's the best regime, and if we maybe try to learn a little bit more, we will learn from these guys.
Of course, democracy. I'm going to start with democracy, but not the kind of democracy that we have here in Iraq. Ahmed, just let me tell you something. I know that you did not hear anything positive about the whole conversation in this panel, and at the same time, I want also to get back to the original question when you did some comparison between Iraq and Lebanon and Egypt, and also I'm going to connect it to this new question. Ahmed, we got three aspects of democracy. We got, one great aspect that has to do with the state institutions, that we're going to have a very strong institution to control the state, and this is a very important thing. And we got also a second object that has to do with the political agreement, the political consensus, and that's where people in every democracy, they have to agree how they are going to be governed, and also how they are going to limit this government and also to monitor it. And then there is the third aspect that I think it is the positive thing that in the whole region, the aspect that has to do on how to build a state on the liberal Western model. This kind of a state that has that promise to freedom and to liberty in the same time. So when we're talking about the call for freedom and liberty, that is the aspect that we have, which is now identified by most of the countries, especially countries that have got democracy after Arab separates. That is the something that gave the hope to people, and they think they hoped at least because the injustice, and they got ruled by dictators for God's sake and for many decades. That is the something that give them the hope, and it's something can move from a country to another. It is the thing that make you think that democracy is just like, I'm sorry to express it this way, like COVID-19, and can spread all over the world. Unfortunately, even freedom is not in a better situation, but through practicing, we consider and we hope that the democracy will be even better. So when we talk about what do you want to your country, and when we talk about also the comparison, what we got in Egypt, we got one aspect only that we think it is promising, which is the state institution, because General Sisi somehow is controlling the country. And that is something important that we don't have in Iraq. What we have in Iraq is the exact opposite, that all institutions are very weak and they can't, as I said, control what is going on within the borders. So I want democracy, Ahmad, but I want it with the three aspects. I want to see that there are institutions that can control the state, because, in the federal papers, and this is very important, when we talk about democracy and institution that we're going to rule Iraq, we have first, to enable the system, to enable even the government first to govern. And then we're going to think about how to put a limit to its authority. And that's what we did not have in Iraq. The situation in Egypt is the exact opposite. We got somehow some institutions that are powerful because we got a General Sisi that imposes power all over Egypt. And of course, we got the military, an institution that control everything. Of course, they are not nice people. They are not good. I know the situation is very bad in Egypt, but we got some stability in somehow. It's not, very promising stability. It is just a stability. So what I want, I don't want to copy the what is happening in Tunisia and just paste it here in Iraq. And also, I don't want to copy what is happening in America, the whole, system in America. I just paste it.
The question. America is not.
Okay, let me talk just on marriage.
You can just copy from the Middle East.
For God's sake, even
that's
Tunisia,
the only kitchen you can eat from.
Okay, because
the الغرب, or you eat رز in الشرق, ولكن you just focus on the Middle East. You want to copy, just copy from the Middle East.
Okay, I know, because in MENA region we got only Tunisia that is in somehow, it is just a good model. Okay, but I just don't want to copy from any part of the world and just paste it in here. I need three aspects from democracy. One, I want to watch, no matter what kind of regime you want to copy and paste, I want first to see a state of an institution. That means there is a central government that governs the borders. Because what is a state, Ahmed? State in the security definition, in the security definition is is govern its borders. If it does not do that, this state, if it does not do that, there is no state. It will be a weak and a fragile state. It's like forever. And I want the second, aspect where I find people, they will agree on how they are going to be government. And this is important. Do you know in Iraq, we still got people until now fighting who is going to be in authority? Is it Shia? Is it Sunni? Is it Kurds? There's still this, discussion going on ever since 2003 and now. And then, of course, I want political and civil rights. And that is something that we got, after we got democracy. And unfortunately, as Samar and Julian explained, the situation is not that better. So that's what is in my mind when I think of democracy, and I hope it will answer your question.
Thank you very much. Julian, which country would you choose? Which political regime would you choose from within the Middle East?
Again, like my colleagues mentioned, it's a very tough question. I think we can get bits and pieces from each of the countries. Okay. But again, as Samar also explained it clearly, that each country has its own specificities. And how I see a political system is a reflection, I would say, of the socio-cultural composition of society. And in Lebanon, we are a very pluralistic country, as you know. So any political system should reflect this pluralism and take into consideration this collective component. However, we should as well take into consideration the individual rights and not only the collective rights of the different, let's say, religious groups that are in Lebanon. So we need as well to have a system that embrace more individuality in a way that would create a good balance between individualism and individual and collective rights, I would say. And this is not an easy question or dilemma to find a solution to, and obviously we didn't find the right equilibrium yet in Lebanon. At the administrative level, also, I would go for a decentralized system at the administrative level. So you have the Tunisian example, you have the Jordanian example that is being put into place, and which has a lot of advantages, giving more power to local governments. Although Lebanon is a small country, but I'm sure that administrative decentralization would bring much value to how we are managing our daily lives, our economy, our politics also. The core challenge that we still need to resolve in Lebanon is our foreign affairs policy. As you know, in Lebanon, there is no, I would say, a core agreement or joint agreement between the different political factions, and not only between different political factions, but also this is a reflection of what's happening at the social level. And this is a very critical question, especially now with what's happening in the region and the international level. So I don't know if there is a specific policy that we can be replicated from any other country in the region. But again, each country has its own specificity, whether in terms of its composition, whether in terms of geography as well. So all what I can say is that I hope, and for as well my colleagues for Egypt, for Iraq, and for Jordan, or for all the countries and the MENA region, that we reach one day a situation where there is a political system where the human being would be at the center of the system, and where the economy would be at the center of the system.
Okay, guys, now it's time for the attendants to ask questions. If any of the attendants wanted to ask question or make a small or short intervention, please raise your hand. I can see one of the panelists raise the hand, which is Samar, but let us give chance first to the attendants. Well, it seems that the talk now go to Samar, the only one who raised the hand. Samar, please.
Actually, I think people would send their questions. They don't have the option to raise their hands. But anyway, I just wanted to comment on what Wissam said, that Egypt is now stable. Well, I think this is what we call a fragile stability. The Syrian regime, the Egyptian regime, all these regimes, the Tunisian regimes, regime in 2010, they were stable regimes, but now they are not. And when the revolutions happen, you can see what kind of problems this kind of fragile stability created. I think that the stability that comes with the price of people's freedom leads to disasters. So I would disagree with my colleague Sam about the idea of stability in the region now.
Okay, a disagreement is always lovely for me. I will tell you, I will be very frankly with you all, participants and also speakers. 5 years ago, we have a question here, Q&A. Anonymous, the Egyptian situation is troubling. What is expected for civil society in the government's plan for a new human rights strategy against the backdrop of implementing regulations? There is a specific question. I think all the panelists can read the question. I think there is a specific question for Egypt. I'm expecting that someone will answer it at some point. Maybe I will just finish this intervention. 5 years ago, thanks to Zash Toney, they gave me the chance to moderate a session in Point Conference, the real conference, when people used to meet in person with no masks. And in that era, it was 5 years already on the Arab revolutions or Arab Spring. And I had speakers from Iraq, speakers from Yemen, speakers from Libya, and speakers from Tunisia. And everybody, another speaker also from Yemen. And everybody was very enthusiastic about the future. Is anybody in this room is enthusiastic about the future? Think the future might bring something good? I'll start with Wissam.
Yes, I told you, I just want to be very negative about the situation in MENA region. We got something that has been achieved, and this is like final, which is now we got more states in MENA region that recognize civil and political rights. It is stated in their constitutions, and it's a huge belief inside everybody, every citizen in MENA region. And this is something positive. But as I told you, this comes with, huge challenges. The weakness that is created by democracy is, open a very huge space to international interventions, and also at the same time to let only few political parties that have power to control and steal the money and to run the show. So this is something positive. And as I said, and explained, indicators tell us that, people still have the tendency to demonstrate, to ask for their rights, and they have demands, and these demands must be answered. So this is something very positive. Actually, in every time when we got the second wave of the Arab Spring, like in 2018 in Sudan and Algeria, and then in 2019 in Iraq and Lebanon, this is just come with, with the huge promises. Even here now in Iraq, that a change must be made. So this is happened in the region, and this is final. And this is going, but unfortunately, it is going in a very, very, long process where, international community is starting to feel hopeless that something is going to change in Iraq and in other countries. And at the same time, people, they are very angry, and they don't trust any government, and they just want, a very quick and fast, improvements. So this is positive, Ahmed, but you have to know how to deal with it, because in somehow it is an opportunity to make a change, but at the same time, it is something that will drive the situation in the region even worse, because it is like an opportunity where, will let the international interventions and the conflicts within these countries to start over. So I'm very sorry, as I told you, I don't want to be negative, but what I think we got from democracy is this only one thing. That's what made me live in Iraq and think the situation will be, in somehow even better. but that does not mean, this is the end. So we'll come to you, after 5 or 10 years, we're going to have the same panel, and we just hope the situation will be even better. Ahmed, thank you.
Okay, there is 3 questions now. I just want to make sure if the other panelists can see the questions. It's down there with Q&A, and there is a question for me personally. There is a question about Egypt. I'm expecting that Samar will answer it, and there is a question specifically on Iraq. Can you read them? Can you see it, Wissam, for example? Can you see it, Samar? If you don't see it, I can copy it and
Yes,
paste
I have just saw it. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
I can just, if you don't see it, Julian, nobody's asking about Lebanon. Do you know why?
No clue. Well, in fact, because
it gives the impression the situation is, well, there is 3 scenarios, but we're still much better than Egypt, which is
exactly.
For me personally, I was like, okay, we can all go and live in Lebanon. At the end of the day, it's much better than Egypt.
Not for now. Wait a bit.
Okay. So, Samar, can you please answer the question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question, and I think it's an optimistic question, and we're very optimistic about the new strategy. Egypt is now drafting a strategy for human rights, maybe for the first time since our current president came to power. And this is strategy, they made several drafts, and in each draft they keep like improving in some areas and like decreasing the level of rights in some areas. And recently there have been several meetings where the strategy has been discussed, and many of the comments came out of it was actually positive, that there are a lot of like common points where we can agree on. And maybe if we can just include more civil society in the process, this would help to improve it to the level that we're all hoping for. I think what the civil society is expecting, or what we as a citizens expecting, is that there have been a recent statement issued by some of the organizations called, it has 7 demands. I think these were like the minimum that they asked for before releasing the strategy, related to releasing the people in pretrial detention and suspending emergency status in Egypt, and closing the case number 173, which is known by the foreign funding case. And this case is mainly deployed to actually interrogate and target human rights activists and NGOs in Egypt, especially the one that is working on human rights. And there have been and another demand related to putting the moratorium on the death penalty until we can review the verdicts that came out, and 2 other and unblocking the websites that are blocked in Egypt, because now if you go to Egypt and if you want to, let's say, watch it, the Al Jazeera, you can't because it's blocked. If you want to download a movie, you can't because the VPN and the website is actually blocked. So they ask it for like minimum 7 demands. And I think what we are all hoping for is that if the government is really willing to improve the situation in Egypt, they would at least, like I would say, interact or react to this demand in a very positive way, because most of them are very, I would say, light demands. There's nothing even like critical in them. There are some things that the president can do with a phone call, like release the detainees, and then everybody's happy and everybody's back home. Or suspend the emergency status, which is actually, from my point of view, we don't need it because there is a lot of oppressive other laws already. So why the emergency law when you have the protest law and other laws? So I think maybe what we're expecting, at least in the very short term, in the upcoming months, is that the state would react to these demands. And in general, like I would say, maybe the strategy is a very positive step, but from the practice and from my like history with the Egyptian government, I would say it's not important what's written in the strategy or what's written in the constitution even, it's important that there is a political will to implement what is in these papers. Because in 2014, for example, Egypt accepted 300 recommendations to improve the situation of human rights in Egypt in the United Nations. And in this moment, you felt like the situation would be like Sweden. And then in 2019, it was a totally different situation. So I would be optimistic, but also skeptical about how this strategy would be like tackled in Egypt. Thank you, and I'm sorry if I took a long time to answer that.
Thank you so very much. Wissam, you have an answer for the question?
Yes, about economy and the balance, after the 2019 October revolution in Iraq, something has happened. And this thing is that we got a new prime minister, Mustafa al-Kadhimi, that was chosen to be the prime minister, but not in the same way that every prime minister came into power, which means they have considered to choose this prime minister first the international interventions, and that is, the usual conflict between East and West, between Iran and the United States of America, and at the same time the willing of the political parties, national political parties in Iraq. But there were a third element, and it is very important, which is the demand of people. This prime minister was chosen because there were a demonstration and people asked to change something. So it is like just they brought al-Kadhimi and said, look, we got you now some prime minister that is different, it's somehow close to people, and he's not Iranian 100%, and he's not American 100%, and he's going to focus on the demands of people. But unfortunately, the economy, about the balance, is still a very strong balance. He himself, a few months ago, stated during his visit to Britain, he said, I'm just like walking on a rope, and I have to balance between two powers, and unfortunately, it is not that easy. At the same time, I have the local, players who are forcing me to choose a side, and because this prime minister, he does not have any party to support him, so he had, after he became a prime minister, to find some political parties and to form a coalition that will support him to stay in power, to stay in his position, because they just can't remove him in the parliament. So did that help in any way the governance indicators in Iraq? Unfortunately, the answer is no. I'm running a program at my organization that this is a program monitoring the government performance, and unfortunately, I don't have any good indicators that this government in somehow is better in providing information to citizens, or even they kept their promises about legislation, access to information law. And unfortunately, this government in particular, did not send or publish any report until now about its performance. So we just got, it's like a media channel of the Prime Minister office, and they are just publishing, it's like fake news about doing something that they have not been done. So unfortunately, no, the international innovations have a huge influence on this prime minister, and and somehow he's just like any prime minister. He's different only in one thing, as I explained, that he has an agenda, and this agenda he has no interest not to implement it, but the challenges is more what he can accomplish.
Thank you, Sam, very much. Julian, there is a question for you, actually, and about the future for constitutional changes and elections.
Yes, thank you, Ahmed. Any constitutional change in any country is a result of a power equilibrium, I would say, a power balance. And this is, I think, very important to be taken into consideration to see if the outcome of any type of constitutional change, what would be the potential outcome? Would it be as if we are opening the Pandora box, or would it be more stability and more cohesion? And those are, I think, this is a very important question, but I think it's not easy to have a clear answer, especially that, as I said, we are on a tectonic plate. We are highly affected by what's happening in the region. I don't think that Lebanese in general, putting aside the different political factions that are existing and with the now emergence of new political groups, do agree on one way at looking at the nation, at Lebanon. So it will be a very delicate process if it's not well managed, any discussion on the constitutional change. As for the elections, I think you mean the legislative elections, because we have 3 elections in 2022. We have the municipal, the legislative, and afterward the presidential election. The municipal elections obviously will take place. This is a more or less easier game. However, legislative elections, I hope that they will take place. There is a narrative now saying that the elections might not take place. But I think there is a local pressure that is pushing towards having elections, and there is an international community pressure as well. I hope it will be maintained also, because when it's coupled with the local pressure, I think it can lead to positive results, hopefully.
Thank you, Julian, very much. Well, there is a question specifically for me, and before I answer this question, I would love to ask you as a panelist if you have any final comments, because I'm thinking to say my final words and close the room. So any of the attendants, any of the panelists who would like to add something, I'm really will be happy to give them the chance. Well, as I can see, no.
Well, let me just add
Yes, please.
a very final thing. You, me, and other civil activists, we have been to Bosnia and Herzegovina 2 years ago to be fellows in a fellowship program of Zashtonet. And in somehow Southeast Europe, they got democracy in the same situation that we have got in MENA region, but they are old enough. They have started this process is about 30 years ago. So the question is, what has changed in Southeast Europe, and what do we expect here in the MENA region? This is, a very young democracy, Ahmed, and democracy needs times. It does not happen overnight a day, and it will take a very long time. When you look, into Western democracies, these countries have started this process about 2 centuries ago, Ahmed. When we talk about the Council of Representatives in Britain, for an example, this institution is strong enough, and always got, I don't know, 4 or 5 centuries old. And what we had, in MENA region, we're still young. And unfortunately, we got a young democracy, but at the same time, there are very huge challenges that is not expected, especially when we talk, about sharing power based on ethnicity and sectarian. When we talk about regional and international interventions, when we talk, about the corruption that we don't have any idea how to control it. So this is still a very young practice in the region, and we need time, a very long time. It is not the time, to say where the reason is going. And believe me, no one will be able to tell you that, because the challenges, is more than what you expect. So that's this is my final statement. I'm talking, just to do a small comparison about the situation in Southeast Europe. This, almost 3 decades ago, when they got democracy, and they are somehow, close to the European Union, and the situation should be a bit promising in there. And they still have challenges. I do know, and every time I go there, that there are challenges in the constitution, in the political situation, and in governance, and in everything. So how about when we talk about MENA region? Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, very much. Well, as I can see, again, there is no more questions by the panelists or by the attendants. The question came to me specifically about what I think in person about the future, especially about the future in my country, Egypt. I'm going to answer this question not only about Egypt and also about the whole region. Basically, I'm a very liberal person from the very ideological point of view. I think the whole region, which is a very center part of the world region geographically, and with the millions, hundreds of millions of people live there, I don't think what this part of the world is seeing is not what the natural laws is giving. Basically, everything happening there, it's against logic. It should not happening this way. And it looks from outside, it's a huge problem, but in the same time, uh, most of these problems is specifically around two main issues: political systems and the religion rule in the region. If we manage to control this, to adapt more democratic political systems and managing to reform the religious agendas in this part of the world, things will be more and more in the much better direction. But what in my side, what against me? In my side, that this is a very young nation. Demographically, all these 22 countries is very young, is well connected to the internet, is having a close countries, they look above. If you see people in young kids in, or young people in Morocco, in Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Sudan, Lebanon, everyone have a country model. Even these generations right now, they are not more convinced with their own local uh, football teams. They are more convinced of the international football teams. You will find a young boy in South Egypt is supporting Barcelona. Another guy is supporting Chelsea. And they are monitoring, seeing the European championships and supporting this. They are not only supporting the political, they are not only supporting the football teams or the t-shirts, they are also supporting the countries, the culture, the political regimes they see there. And every one of these young people see that his reality is not normal like the other young people in the other part of the world. So this equation is going to be continued. However, the political regimes in the Arab region accepted or not accepted, that's another issue. However, the international support to these regimes is going to be continued or not be continued. The question of why we are like this, why we are less developed, why the internet, my son, 9 years old, is asking me why the internet speed in Egypt is not the internet speed in Estonia. And he's suffering from this. And he's saying the internet should change. He's a 9 years old only. And I'm sure that when he get older and his peers, when they got older, they will ask much bigger questions. Why the government is not changing, why we should do this stupid educational programs, why we should do that, why the economy, why should we work more hard and get less, why should we have less health insurances, why we our educational academies and university is not well known internationally, and the years we spend in this buildings is not reflected to our own benefits when it's come to the world market. A question like this is a fundamental question. It's not only political questions, it's related to the people's lives. And once the people's lives is touched because of political systems or because of religion, people think by nature to change that. First, they think what's the problem, and then they start to think how we change that. The civil society in the Middle East have a huge opportunity. Actually, from my personal point of view, I think we are the only capable force in this region is to fighting Daesh. If you read Daesh main book, التوحش, something, I don't remember the first name. The main book is basically based on the concept that the Daesh organization should have a huge civic engagement on a civic daily basis with the people to help them to develop much better environment, much better livelihood, and then radicalize these societies. We are the only ones who can fight radicalization, who can fight undemocratic regimes, and we are the only ones who can represent the people, the average people. Political parties in the region and internationally in the world, even in the United States, is facing reality of a big challenges. People is not supporting political parties. In Europe, look at them. Political parties, you can find in Italy, political groups, political currents. People support them more than going to support this party or that. So the concept of political parties is changing, and maybe need to be changed, and maybe need to pick up some new tools. But they're still in this dilemma, and they are not answering the needs. I think this is also the problem in Lebanon, for example. Political parties are political parties. Structure, leadership, people in the top think this way we should go, and this is not affecting people's life in the streets, which is, in the end of the day, means that they are facing a huge challenge because people is not voting for them anymore. People is felt that they are not representing them anymore. And this will bring different challenges. As long as there is an internet, there is an outreach, even if it's person-to-person outreach. In a country like Egypt, doing a conference like this, once it's not online, it will be impossible to happen. But you can still talk to some young people over the internet. Bigger group, smaller group, one-on-one discussions, but you still have the huge opportunity to seeds out the societies to bring that change. They need, not what I want, not what Wissam want, not what Summer think, not what Julian think. They need this. They need to have a better life, and they know that better life not coming from God. They know this is coming through political process. People, they know this is coming from understanding the situation and start to try to change it. I'm still optimistic. If Darko and Zashtoni give me the chance after 5 years, how the situation in the Middle East, I'm sure I will bring me and other panelists more and more good news. Thank you very much for spending this few hours with us. I hope we've been trying to answer the questions. I see the fourth question very late, sorry. And I wish you a very happy weekend, all of you, everywhere in the world. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Take it to
everyone.
all of you.
Stay safe.